Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta ya hayyu ya qayyum taj'alul hazna in shi'ta sahla Allahumma arzuqna niyatin khalisatan liwajhikal kareem lillahi ta'ala. The author, may Allah protect him, said, those people who deviated from the Muslims in this issue, because they did not understand what worship means. They did not go according to what Al-Quran, the Sunnah, and what the scholars of Islam said. So we're talking about the Wahhabis who did not understand the meaning of worship, and they thought that the mere calling on someone, if you called on someone, and that they were not present, they were absent, then this is shirk according to them. And which we said, we gave the proofs that this is not the case. This is where their deviation started. They said calling upon a person is shirk. Why do you claim that? Either because the mere calling upon someone is kufr, according to your claim, or because this person is dead. So if they're saying just calling somebody, oh such and such, they say if this is shirk, according to you this is shirk, or because this person is dead. Either the mere calling, so if you claim that the mere calling someone is blasphemy, you're going against Al-Quran. It is clearly mentioned in the Quran that a Muslim among Bani Israel called upon Musa. You remember when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was walking by, that person was fighting, and then he called upon Musa. Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. He said, "O Musa," Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam did not say you committed shirk. You called upon me. And every one of us calls each other. Oh such and such, oh come and help me. Oh, everyone knows that this is not shirk or blasphemy. So this is refuted. So then they say, no, if he's absent. So the mere calling on someone is not shirk. Now they say, okay, if you call an absent person. The Prophet ﷺ, regarding the first case, he said, "Oh Aisha, Ya Aisha," which means, "Oh Aisha." With this they cannot say anything. So then we go to the next step, where they claim that this is for someone who's not present. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna Allah fi awni al-abdi ma kana al-abdu fi awni akhihi," which means Allah helps the slave who helps other slaves. Subhanallah. May Allah Ta'ala help us on the Day of Judgment. If we help people in this, Muslims in need in this life, Allah Ta'ala will help us in the hereafter. The Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to help one another. He said, "Inna Allah fi awni al-abdi ma kana al-abdu fi awni akhi." Allah will help the slave as long as the slave helps his brother or sister. So it is mentioned in the hadith that helping other is good. So if we're doing something good, and if I was doing something good and I say, "Oh my brother, come and help me," everyone knows there's a rule in Islam to help, to doing something good is good. To ask someone else, to call on someone else to come and help you in doing that good is also good. So you say, "Oh my brother, come and help me." Isn't that something good? I sought help from another Muslim. I sought help from other than Allah. Of course that other Muslim is not Allah. It's other than Allah. And I just called on someone other than Allah. And this is not shirk, it's not blasphemy, but rather it's a good thing if I'm doing something good. It's actually good, it's rewardable. So also they don't have anything to say as in this as well. Then we take it further to the next step. we say, if you're saying that it is not permissible because the one being addressed is dead, he's a person who died, the one being called upon is a dead person, that is why it is shirk, according to your claim, then your statement is also incorrect and invalid. Every Muslim knows that this is incorrect and invalid. Why? Because every Muslim in his prayer, he says, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There's huruf al-nida. We didn't come up with huruf al-nida. Harf al-nida, the statement of harf, the harf that is called calling upon. The scholars in the past, they listed it. Go to the books of Nahu, you will see, they say huruf al-nida are 6. They say ya. Amongst them is ya. Amongst them is ay. Amongst them is ayyuha. And others. So, if you look in the books of Nahu, you're saying, Assalamu alayka, ayyuhan nabiyyu, O Prophet of Allah. This nida is there. And the Prophet ﷺ, certainly he died. No one amongst the Muslim scholars claims otherwise. Everyone knows that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ died, he passed away. And but he's alive in his grave. But besides the fact of that being alive in his grave, everyone knows that he died, and we're calling on him. In our prayer, every Muslim does that. So, addressing the Prophet ﷺ, saying, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu, would the Prophet ﷺ teach the people to say in their prayer 5 times a day shirk? Obviously not. It cannot be the case. So you don't have a point there either, we tell them. Period. On top of that, the scholars of the language, the linguists, did not explain worship as you claim. No scholar said worship means calling on someone, as they claim. So you take him to the next step. Either you say that this is kufr because you're addressing another creature, which is not valid. If I call someone else, everyone knows that this is not blasphemy, or because you're seeking help from other than Allah. And we already mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Allah fi awni al-abdi ma kana al-abdu fi awni akhi. And we mentioned, when you're doing something good, you call someone else to help you. Didn't the Prophet ﷺ say, help each other in what pertains to calling the people to Islam? Cooperate with another and help each other. He told 2 companions that they used to go and do exactly what the Prophet did to the area that the Prophet sent them. They would cooperate with each other and ask each other for advice and help. So asking help from other than Allah is not blasphemy in itself. Unless somebody worshipped other than Allah, and asking help is not worship. So the Prophet ﷺ told us, Allah helps those who helps other slaves. Seeking help from others to do something is a rewardable act and not shirk, if it pertains to something good. The Prophet ﷺ told us, Hassan ibn Thabit, the poet, Hassan ibn Thabit, the poet who used to defend the Prophet ﷺ in his poetry, when he was told about that, the Prophet ﷺ told the Hassan, Jibrilu ma'ak, Jibril yansuruk. He said, Jibrilu ma'ak, which means Jibrilu yansuruk, means Jibril will support you in this act. He used to defend the Prophet in poetry, alayhi salatu wassalam. So he will say, the Jibril will support you. The Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam said to that other companion, A'inni ala nafsika bikathrati sujud. You remember when that companion, the Prophet ﷺ did something good for the Prophet. And the Prophet ﷺ, it was his habit, If you did something good, He would reciprocate good back towards you. So he asked him, ask me for something. He said, I wish to be your companion in paradise. He did something small, and the Prophet ﷺ said, go ahead and ask me. And he said, I wish to be your companion in paradise. He said, other than that. He said, I have nothing other than that. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, أعني على نفسك بكثرة السجود, which means help me by making a lot of sujud. So he used the word help. أعني على نفسك, help me, على نفسك, over yourself, by doing a lot of sujud. And the Prophet used this statement, which means أعني means help me. So, or in this hadith is sahih, are you saying that calling other than Allah contains addressing a dead person? But we will address the Prophet ﷺ in our prayers. Had it been blasphemy, the Prophet ﷺ would not teach that to say in the prayer 5 times a day. What can they say about that? Nothing. Period. They only address the ignorant people. They say, oh, Allah said, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. So they say, it is only you that we seek help from, and it is only you that we worship, and it is only you that we seek help from. It is only Allah that we worship, and it is only Allah Ta'ala that creates the help and the benefit. So when we're seeking help from Allah, it is different than seeking help from someone else. Because I believe that Allah Ta'ala is the creator of the help. If I'm asking help from someone else, I know Allah Ta'ala is the one who creates that. So that's the meaning of that verse. It does not mean if you ask help from someone else, then this is shirk. But the Muslim who is ignorant, he doesn't know all of that. They come with a beard, come with a turban, they recite the Quran, they speak Arabic, and they come with all these things, and the person, he says, he whispers to them. If that person starts listening to the whisper, and he accepts what they do, then he destroyed himself. So the Wahhabis, facing these facts, were refuted by this, and one called Albani, which he passed away, alhamdulillah, with no intelligence, who died recently, said, in the prayer, this stands as a proof. When we say 5 times a day, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What are they going to say about that? So, faced with this fact, what is he going to say? So he said, it was okay for us to say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh when the Prophet taught that. But that was during his lifetime. He said, but after his lifetime, we should take out the word ayyuha, which means nida, which is calling on. Oh, saying oh. He said, let's say Assalamu alayka an-nabiyyu. Taking out the word ayyuha. And we know that for 1,400 years ago, from 1,400 years, the Muslims in the East and the West have been saying this in their prayer. Everywhere they continue to say it. Even the Wahhabis, they say it. Other than the small minority of them, they say it. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu. So, because he said that, because he didn't see another way out against this proof. The Prophet ﷺ is not present. He's in his grave, and we're saying Assalamu alayka ayyuha ayyuhan nabiyyu, and the Prophet ﷺ died. So both their conditions that they put is refuted. In this issue, even many of the Wahhabis did not agree with him. So on top of that, we tell them the Prophet ﷺ is alive. It is enough what we mentioned before. But if someone wants to go further, then you say that, well, the prophets are alive in their grave. They died, and then they have another life. As will everyone, but their life is different than the lives of others. Others will decay. They do not decay. And there's other differences as well. So prophets are alive in their graves praying. Didn't the Prophet ﷺ, we're in what month right now? We're in the month of Rajab. Didn't the Prophet ﷺ say in the night of Isra wal Miraj, which was in the month of Rajab, the 27th of Rajab, Allah Ta'ala honored Muhammad ﷺ with this greatest miracle after the miracle of the Quran, that no prophet was given. He, on this night that is explicitly mentioned in the Quran, that he traveled in the night from Masjid al-Haram ila al-Masjid al-Aqsa, as mentioned in that verse right there. Min al-Masjid al-Haram ila al-Masjid al-Aqsa. So from Masjid al-Haram, which is in Mecca, to Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, he traveled in the night. And he said, as narrated by Imam Muslim, I saw رأيت موسى قائما يصلي في قبره. I saw Musa alayhi salatu wasalam standing in his grave praying. And what are they going to say about this narration? How was Musa praying in his grave? If it is true as they claim that prophets, they disintegrate and they're dead and they can't benefit others. They say only the Quran and the Sunnah will benefit. Well, the Prophet ﷺ said, I saw Musa in his grave praying. So if we call on him saying, Ayyuhan Nabiyu, we're addressing the one who's alive. This is our belief. When we go to visit Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam in the Masjid of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, we say, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. It is our belief that he is alive in his grave, and we are addressing the one who can hear us and who can reply. This is what Muslims believe. Why else would we go over there in that specific place and say, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan Nabiyu? Or we say, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah in the grave. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Anbiya'u ahya'un fi quburihim yusallun. Al-Anbiya, the prophets, ahya'un, they're alive. Fi quburihim, in their graves, yusallun, they're praying. So, if he says, okay, I agree that the Prophet Muhammad is alive, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he's in his grave. But he says, but he's not present in the session. Then we go back to that saying that we said earlier about us saying, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan Nabiyyu, and the Prophet is not alive, he's not in the session. This is one proof that's enough. We don't even need to go further. If you want somebody's interested, they see they're listening, then we can go to teach them further. We would say, we would bring further for them if they are accepting. Then we go further and we tell them about the hadith of the blind man. The hadith of the blind man. A blind man came and asked the Prophet ﷺ. He said, O Prophet of Allah, make dua for me that I regain my eyesight. The Prophet ﷺ said, I will make dua for you, or you can be patient. You can be patient, or I can make dua for you. Which means, if you remain patient, it is better for you because there's reward in patience. And there's a big reward for being blind and being patient with that, not falling into sins because of your blindness. So, if a person can do that, there's a huge reward. It's very, very hard on the person to be blind and with all the hardships, and they don't disobey Allah Ta'ala despite that. So this man, he said, Ya Rasulullah, it is very hard for me. I have no one to hold my hand and to guide me. So the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet of mercy, taught him what to say. He said, go to the place of wudu. Make wudu. So what does that indicate? Go, they were in the masjid. When this man came, the companions were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ. This man came and he said that to the Prophet. So the Prophet said, go to the place of wudu, which is not inside the masjid. Everybody knows that. So what does that mean? He's not in the session. So go and make wudu. Then pray 2 rakas. And then say dua al-hajah. And everyone in the Muslim countries, people in Afghanistan, they know dua al-hajah. And it's in the books, in the East and West. And it is proven, when you have hardships, you make this dua, Allah Ta'ala will fulfill what you ask for, insha'Allah. So, this man went, the companion said, we would not stay there long, and this man returned with his eyesight back. Imagine, he goes, the companion said, we didn't go, we were still in the same session. He came back with his eyesight back. So he did that, and that means he prayed, and then after he said salam from his prayer, he finished his prayer, he made this dua, and he was not in the session. So, because in that dua, there's calling on, they're saying, Ya Muhammad. And the Prophet taught him that. So, the dua is as follows in Arabic: Allahumma inni as'aluka wa atawajjahu ilayka bi nabiyyika Muhammad nabiyyur rahmah. Ya Muhammad, inni atawajjahu bika ila rabbi fi hajati. And then you mention your haja here. Then you say lituqdali, which means, O Allah, I ask you by Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, the Prophet of mercy. O Muhammad, I am asking Allah by you that when my need will be fulfilled. And you mention your need. That this need, and you mention it, that will be fulfilled. The blind man did that. He came back to the session and he was seeing. This hadith is narrated by how many huffaz do you think? And when we say huffaz, we're not talking about someone who is just narrates the hadith without being able to get to the status of showing that this is actually sahih or not. How many huffaz do you think mentioned that this hadith is sahih? 16. And not just any huffaz, the top of the huffaz, scholars of hadith, said that this hadith is sahih. Amongst them, this Al-Bayhaqi, At-Tabarani, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and others. Al-Bayhaqi, which is a great scholar in the Shafi'i school. At-Tabarani, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i are great scholars of hadith. And many others, they said that this hadith is sahih. And in that hadith, they're saying the statement of Ya Muhammad, and not in the presence of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But this hadith has another narration to it. One narration that occurred to the companions when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was present. There's another narration that happened to the companions, which is also called hadith. But there's a hadith that does not reach the Prophet. It's a hadith that reached the companions. So, during the caliphate of Uthman radiallahu anhu, a man, you asked Uthman radiallahu anhu for some things that he needed. More than once. Uthman radiallahu anhu forgot. So he came to a companion. He said, can you go and talk to Uthman? I have this need. So that companion told him, rather than telling him, I will talk to Uthman, he said, just go ahead and make this dua. Go to the place of wudu, then pray 2 rakahs. And after you finish your prayer, make this dua is that we just mentioned. And then come back to me. So this man, he did that, but he did not go back to that companion. He went directly to Uthman. He knocked on the door. The doorman answered, and he took him by his hand, and he took him directly to Uthman, and sat him next to Uthman, radiallahu anhum. And Uthman said, every time you mentioned that need to me, I forgot. Tell me what was that thing that you were asking me? I forgot what it was. And he said, he mentioned to him his need, and Uthman radiallahu anhu fulfilled that need for him. So this part of the hadith is narrated. So we already established that the blind man said this hadith not in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. And this hadith establishes what? That it happened after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, and during the time of Caliphate of Uthman. So their condition, them putting a condition that the Prophet ﷺ must be present, is refuted by this hadith, the first hadith of the blind man. Then them saying that the Prophet ﷺ must have been alive is also refuted by this narration. Although the proof that we say in the prayer is sufficient, because that refutes both of them. But this as an extra proof for the one who is seeking it. And also, this hadith is also a hadith about the companion. The other portion of it is mentioned by a great scholar at-Tabarani in his book. He has only 3 books. He has a book called Mu'jam al-Saghir and Mu'jam al-Kabir, and another Mu'jam is a middle Mu'jam. So in his book Mu'jam al-Saghir, he narrated many hadith. It's 1 volume only. And he did not say about any other narrations of those hadith in that book that this is sahih, except this one. Subhanallah. It's as if Allah Ta'ala inspired him to say that, so that the Ahl Sunnah can use his statement in the face of the Wahhabis who will come many centuries after him. At-Tabarani, in his book Mu'jam al-Saghir, where he narrated this portion, he said, وَهَذَا الْحَدِيثُ صَحِيحٌ. And he did not say that about any other hadith. All the other hadith he narrated, he gave the hadith without mentioning its classification. This is the only hadith that he mentioned its classification. Rahmatullah alayh. Allah Ta'ala inspired him. That would stand as proof for Ahl Sunnah to be used in defending the creed of Ahl Sunnah. So those Wahhabis are absurd. Why? Because if they're saying that the Prophet ﷺ did not know, and the companions did not know, Al-Bukhari narrated shirk in his book, At-Tabarani likewise, At-Tirmidhi, As-Sunni, An-Nawawi, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, and so on, none of them knew, and they all narrated shirk in their books. So according to them, from the Prophet ﷺ until a man who came about 250 years ago, his name was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, or up to Ibn Taymiyyah, nobody knew about this issue, that calling on someone is shirk, or they say calling on the absent, or calling on the one who is not alive is shirk. No one knew except them. So you can see how dangerous that is, because when they say that, then they say that, oh, these people are mushrik, and then they go start with the violence. That's how they do. They start teaching the people, well, these people are mushrik. Then, now they legitimize their killing and their harming and using violence, because now they give themselves legitimacy. So this is why it's very, very important to warn against them. So this is the meaning of what they're saying. Such a saying does not have any weight. This is what Ahmad Zaini Dahlan, the scholar of Mecca, at his time narrated, that a man, a head of his tribe, addressed Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. He addressed them, saying, were you claiming that what they said about Muslims being mushriks and grave worshippers and those other things that they said? They said, then what do you say by the people of your region, your sheikhs, and the Muslims in the different regions? What do you say about them? Because according to you, all of them are saying these statements, and these are the people of your region. What do you say about them? And he said, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab replied, my sheikhs and the sheikhs of my sheikhs, up to 600 years before us, they were all mushriks. So they said, from the time, some of them will say after, they will say from the Salaf, but some of those people that we mentioned, they're from the Salaf. But anyhow, say after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, whatever time that they will specify, till Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah came, they said they were all mushriks other than them. They said no one else knew about this. They found out about it after 600 years, after Ibn Taymiyyah clarified it for everybody. Or Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. So according to him, our religion is transmitted to us by mushriks and blasphemers. Of course, this is against the hadith of the Prophet in the Quran, but we're not going to go into that. Those are the Wahhabis. This is what they say. If this is the case, we need to put a lot of effort to warning the people about them, so that Muslims will not fall into their trap. And they will believe, they will have bad, ill thoughts about other Muslims unrightfully, and they will think that other Muslims are mushriks. So an ignorant person somebody might come to an ignorant person, and he thinks, okay, this person, he recites the Quran like me, he prays like me, he fasts like me, he performs Hajj like me, and on top of that, he sees his beard and his headscarf that he wears, and all of these things, and he might listen to him. This is why it's important to warn against them, because they call themselves Ahl Sunnah, and they're not Ahl Sunnah. They're called Wahhabis, and they don't like this term to be said about them. They call themselves Salafi. Well, the Salaf are the people of the first 3 centuries. This Ya is called Ya al-Nasbiyya, Nuristani, Kabuli, Quraishi, Hanbali, Hanafi. This Ya al-Nasbiyya pertains to. We're saying Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, the people who followed him, they call him Wahhabi. They say, well, Al-Wahhab is the name of Allah. Yes. Just like the scholars called the people who followed Ghulam Ahmad, they call him Ahmadi. We don't say this is the name of the Prophet ﷺ. How can you say that these people are misguided and still call him Ahmadis? We mean they follow a man named Ghulam Ahmad. And Wahhabis, they follow a man named Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. And this is linguistically, there's no problem with that. But once again, ignorant Muslims, they don't know linguistics. And then they say, Al-Wahhab is the name of Allah. How can you say Wahhabi is bad? We're not saying Al-Wahhab, Allah is bad. We're saying that this man who follows Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, he came with the wrong creed. So, one time, the Shaykh is saying, I was with my Shaykh, and I visited a school. In that school, there was a person teaching Arabic language. Later, he started a newsletter. So that's how he got in. He got in just teaching Arabic, not any religion. Then after some time they asked him, can you do some, he said yes. And he started doing a newsletter for them. In that newsletter, our sheikh, when he visited there, he took that newsletter, he took it home, and he read in it the statements of Wahhabis. Although the school was not, it was Ahl Sunnah school. So the sheikh, he informed his sheikh about it. And, excuse me, he went back to that person who wrote, before he informed the sheikh, he went to that person who wrote this issue, and he started to give proof after proof, and this person was silenced. And he was with his sheikhs next to him. This Wahhabi was with his other Wahhabi sheikh, was next to him. And his sheikh did not say anything at all the whole time. As for him, after a couple of proofs, he could not say anything. He was silenced. So he said, our sheikh went back to his sheikh and he told him what happened. He said, okay, and did you tell him that you are a Wahhabi? So our sheikh, he said, I told him other things, but I didn't tell him you are a Wahhabi. He said, go back and tell him you are a Wahhabi. In his face, tell him you are a Wahhabi. So this will affect him, that he will not be open. It will slow him down. It will stop him from doing things that he will hesitate about. So he said, I went several days. Every day I would go, they told me he's sick. He didn't come back to school and where he used to work. I went there until we had to leave that city. But he said, this is how important the sheikh would send me every day. Go and tell him you are a Wahhabi. So, this is to prevent their harm, to prevent their fitna. This is what Islam orders. Sometimes, even if you know that the person will not accept, it's still beneficial to mention that to him in his face, to actually get him to stop or slow him down in the ill teachings that they do. There's another man in Montreal, Canada. He was authoring a book. And our sheikh, he said, I looked at the book and then I showed it to his sheikh. And he said to him, he told me to go and advise him. He said, I told the sheikh, he's not going to accept. Most likely he's not going to accept. The sheikh, he said, told me, still go and advise him. He said, because it will slow him down or it will stop him. So he said, yes, you're right. So I did that. I composed the letter. He told me what to write, and I wrote the letter, and then I gave it to him. And that man, he was at the last stages of publishing his book, and he did not publish it. He moved from Montreal, and till this day, it's not published. The last time the sheikh checked, it was still not published. Everything was done for him to publish it. After he went and told him in his face, he gave the proofs why he's incorrect, he got scared. If they know people will openly mention, like, how should I say, openly tell people, others about them, they might think about their money, they might think about other issues and hold back. So this is what the religion orders. If they tell you, well, I never heard these things that you mentioned, then you tell him, then why are you claiming to be a teacher? Go and learn before you come and you tell these things to the people. And this is an issue of belief. How are you calling Muslims non-Muslims and you don't know? So, what shows what Ahl Sunnah said is correct is what Al-Bukhari narrated in his book Al-Adab Al-Mufrad, which is not his book Al-Sahih. His Sahih book, very famous. Another book he's called Al-Adab Al-Mufrad, which is also very famous, which means the good ethics. In the chapter about what one would say if he had a sickness. It's kind of like almost like a paralyzation or something that happens in the leg. So, in his book Al-Adab al-Mufrad, in the section, what would one say if you had the sickness? So, what is an indication? It's indication encouraging, because the name of the book is what? The Good Ethics. So he would not say the good ethics and then include something which is bad. So in the section that it says, what would one say if one got this disease? He mentioned this hadith. What is that hadith? The Arabs in the past, it was their habit. If you got the sickness, someone would say, mention the most beloved to you. And in the old days, sometimes they would say, they're a woman that they loved, or this was their habit. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, which is a great companion, Abdullah, the son of Umar radiallahu anhu, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam testified to his piety. He said, innahu rajulun salih. He is a pious man. He is a wali. Innahu rajulun salih. He said about Abdullah ibn Umar. So this is a great companion. And his father is a great companion, which everyone knows. So one time he was in his session and he got the sickness and he couldn't move. Somebody in the session, as in the past, as the Arabs were used to, said, Udhkur ahabba nasa ilayk. Mention the most beloved person to you. Immediately Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, Ya Muhammad. And he got up as the camel that's tied for a long time and you let him loose. Immediately the camel stands up. That's how he got up. Radiallahu anhu. He was cured by the power, by idhnillah. So this happened. When did this happen? This happened after the death of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Al-Bukhari, who narrated Al-Bukhari? In what book? Al-Adab al-Mufrad. Ibn Sunni narrated this hadith, another Hafiz. An-Nawawi, another Hafiz, mentioned it in his book Al-Adhkar. Ibn al-Jazari also mentioned it. They're all Huffaz, top scholars of hadith. They all narrated in the chapter. So in their books, they narrated in what chapter? In the chapter, what would one do if they had the sickness? So it's an encouragement. It is not saying, don't do this when you're sick. What would one do if you're sick with this? Mention the most beloved to you. And they said, what Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, Ya Muhammad. He put his hand on that area and he said, Ya Muhammad. And they used to say that with the intention of getting cured. They would sometimes say it about a woman that they loved or someone. But Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, who did he say it about? He said it about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So what is the judgment of the person is encouraging others to commit shirk? We know to encourage others to commit blasphemy is blasphemy. And to encourage others to commit shirk is shirk. It's blasphemy. It's kufr. So, like if somebody says, worship this idol, that's blasphemy. So, according to the Wahhabis, these hadith is narrated by these Huffaz. What are they going to say about those Huffaz? They say, although they don't dare to say it publicly, but the meaning of what they're saying is they deem all those Huffaz as blasphemers. All the top scholars of Islam, they deem them as blasphemers because they narrated in their books these hadith. Okay, we take it one step further. Let's mention a person who's not a Hafiz. Or he's misguided. Their so-called Shaykh, the one who they call Shaykh al-Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah, he narrated this hadith. And the hadith, the book that is printed is not printed by his enemies. It's published in Saudi Arabia. by Wahhabis themselves. Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned this hadith. He authored a small booklet called The Good Words. He called it Ala Zamihi. According to him, he alleged that this book has the Kalimat Tayyib, the good words, in which he narrated this hadith. So the author of this, the title of this book indicates what? If he calls something the good kalima, the good words, is he going to put hadith in there that he considers it's shirk, or it is haram, it is bad? No. So he's going to put hadith as the title of his book indicates. In his book, he does not say this hadith is not sahih, but on the contrary, he said this is sahih. So in that book, he claims there's a chapter, what would one do if he was affected with this sickness, al-khadar? He mentioned the same hadith as the other scholars did. Although we don't base it on him. But they call him Shaykh al-Islam, and then they published his book, and it's in that book it is mentioned. You know, the people of misguidance, it is their habit that they contradict themselves. Just like when you talk to a Christian or a Jew, you will find them in one place they say God has power over everything, and then they contradict that. So in one area they might say God is unique, and then another statement, by mean unique, no one resembles him, and of course they resemble him to the creation. So people who are of misguidance, it is their habit that they contradict themselves. So we tell him, okay, Ibn Taymiyyah narrated this in his book. Either, what do you say about Ibn Taymiyyah? Either they say he's mushrik or kafir, or they take back their statement, and this is what we want. Let them not say that this is shirk anymore. And this is what we want him to say. So either you say, if you say this is shirk, then according to your statement, Ibn Taymiyyah would be mushrik. And we would say that to them for them to stop. You claiming he's Shaykh al-Islam, and he narrated in this book, and you published this book. So either you claim what you said was wrong, and what he narrated is correct, or you need to quit what you're saying. They have no answer for that. In one copy of this book, what is the name of this book? Kalimatul Tayyib. He called it the good word. And in one of his book that was published recently, Albani, the one that died recently, he has a comment on it. And Albani is a famous, the heads of the Wahhabis. He had a comment on this book. And in the area where this hadith is mentioned, he said, I wish Ibn Taymiyyah would not have mentioned this hadith. It opens the door for shirk. So we tell them, regardless of what you wish, he said it. It's narrated, you're admitting that he said it. And he said it, regardless of what you wish. Now what do you say about him? And basically, and you don't let him take you to what is the classification of hadith, because he said, I wish he would not have mentioned this weak hadith. Regardless of sahih hadith, he mentioned it. He called it kalimat tayyib. He said this is a good word. If this is something shirk, and he said, as a person allowed to say something is shirk as something good? No. To accept blasphemy is blasphemy. And according to you, he did say this is something good, which is something good. But according to you, this is shirk. So now what do you say about him? Once one of the heads of the Wahhabis wanted to debate one of our brothers. So this brother told the Shaykh, He said, this person wants to debate me. So he said, go ahead and debate him and tell him that such and such, tell him about this hadith that Ibn Taymiyyah said this in this booklet. What do you say? And don't go anywhere else. Just say, he mentioned to him other things, but in the beginning, just stick to this. What do you say? This is according to, published by those people. And this is what he mentioned. And the man, he was supposed to come in his appointed time. He didn't. Although it was according to his conditions in the appointed date that he wanted, and the place and all of that was according to him, he ran away. But let's talk about Ibn Taymiyyah, who he was. So for the person who doesn't know who he is, Ibn Taymiyyah lived about 800 years ago. He lived in the 8th Hijri century. His grandfather was a well-known Hanbali scholar. So don't get confused. Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, about 250 years ago, he came from the area of Najd, where the Prophet ﷺ said, يَطْلَوْ قَرْنُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ النَّجْدِ. He said, the horn of the devil will come out of Najd. And that's where he came out of. So the other one, Ibn Taymiyyah, he was not from this area. He is from Al-Hurran, which is in the area of Asham. So he lived in the area of Damascus. His grandfather was a well-known Hanbali scholar, the grandfather of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. His father also had knowledge, enough knowledge. His father died when Ibn Taymiyyah was a child. But when we say Ibn Taymiyyah, we're not talking about his father and we're not talking about his grandfather, because they're also called Ibn Taymiyyah. It goes back to a person in their ancestry. So we're not talking about his grandfather, we're not talking about his father. We're talking about him. When his father died and he was a little boy, the scholars of his time had pity on him because of his grandfather and father. They had pity on him. They would take care of him in terms of food, sustenance, and these things. So when he grew up, the arrogance that he had in his heart did not show. And he used to teach. They started to give him a position to teach. In the old days, and this was very beneficial, in the old days, the Muslims used to have waqf. Certain property, money, things to be used by people who are students and teachers. So in order for him to get some of that money, they put him as a teacher so he can get some of that money because of a situation. So, but at that time, he did not say things against Islam or against Ahl Sunnah at that time. After some time, when he started to teach, the arrogance started to appear in him, and he looked down on scholars, on top scholars. We're talking about the great scholars like Abu Hanifa or Shafi or Malik and Ahmad, who are like mountains, each one of them. And he started to say things that went against the belief of Ahl Sunnah. So this is why some scholars before, because in the beginning what he said was not wrong. So you will find some scholars who praised him in the beginning. They did not know about him except at that time, except good things. So they praised him. But after these things appeared, those scholars who heard about those wrong things afterwards, they changed their statements. One of those beliefs, now we're going to discuss what Ibn Taymiyyah, he negated, what he went against the ijma' on. One of those beliefs that he came up is that Allah is in the upper direction, wa'liyadhu billah, that he sits on the throne. And this is blasphemy. The proof for that, the proof against that is Allah existed and nothing else existed. He created everything and he is now as he was before. Change does not befit Allah. What changes is a creation. Isa alayhi salatu wasalam changes, so he's not God. Anything that changes is not God. The sun rises and sets, so it's not God. The moon rises and sets, so it's not God. Anything that changes, it is in need of the one who's changing it. So Allah Ta'ala does not change. He's perfect. He existed before everything. He exists now as he existed before. without any change. This man, he said Allah is sitting above the arsh in the upper direction. And in one of his areas, he said that Allah is sitting on the kursi. And another time he said he's sitting on the arsh. And another time he said he will leave the space of 4 fingers for Prophet Muhammad to sit next to him. Waliyadu billah. And obviously this is likening Allah to the creation, and this is misguidance. He also said, another misguidance, he said it is not permissible to say, "Oh Allah, I ask you by the Prophet," which we talked about. The Prophet taught that, alayhi salatu wasalam. Asking by the Prophet is not saying that Muhammad is Allah. You're saying, "Oh Allah, I am asking you by the high status of the Prophet that you created. You gave him this high status. And he's a reason for khair and for good things to come to people." But he didn't understand that. He said it is not permissible. He also said, you cannot call on the Prophet except in that specific case mentioned in his book, regarding that we just mentioned, al-khadr, when the illness that comes to the leg. He said, other than that, you cannot call the Prophet, it is shirk. That doesn't even make any sense, that he would give an exception to shirk in this case. He said, it is not permissible to hold the Mawlid celebrations. Okay, but he has some details about this. He deems holding a celebration as haram. You see his contradiction. He said, but if a Muslim celebrated, not knowing that this contradicts the rules of Islam, he thought that he loved the Prophet, so he celebrated the Mawlid of the Prophet, and not knowing that this contradicts the rules of the religion, he gets reward for that. We tell him, wait a minute, if something is sin, and the person doesn't know that this is sin, how is he going to get reward for committing a sin? If that was the case, everyone would remain ignorant, and he will have an excuse for everything. Rather, so this is incorrect as well. And when the Wahhabis, they don't like his statement regarding this issue, that the hadith, that the reason why they think is he was too lenient in this issue. They say he needed to be more firm. Why? So they can, because if they claim somebody has a bid'ah in his creed, then they call him he's mubtadi' in the creed. And then they say he's a big, enormous sinner. And then they can use violence against him. So that's why in this issue of the Mawlid, they didn't like the fact that Ibn Taymiyyah, although the one they called Shaykh al-Islam, they didn't like the fact that they said he was too lenient about this. He also, Ibn Taymiyyah, said that the matter of the universe is not created by Allah. Waliyadu billah. Allah Ta'ala said, وَخَلَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. He created everything. Everything other than Allah is created. He said, the universe has matters and particles that the universe is made from. He said, this always existed with Allah. So he's saying that something else has the attribute of not being created, which is shirk and blasphemy. And he said hellfire after some time turns off and it extinguishes. Allah Ta'ala said that the blasphemers will be in torture. It will never be lessened. لا يخفف عنهم من عذابها. لا يخفف. There's another ayah. لا يخفف عنهم العذاب. Allah Ta'ala will not decrease their torture. Another ayah, Allah Ta'ala said, خالدين فيها أبدا. And it's talking about torture. They will remain in that torture forever. Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah said, hellfire will extinguish after a period of time. Waliyadu billah. This contradicts the explicit verses. He also said traveling to visit Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is sinful. A'udhu billah. In the books of hadith, it is mentioned that Bilal radiallahu anhu came from the area of Sham to Medina to visit only for visiting the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And another Sahih hadith, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, لا يهبطن عيسى ابن مريم حكما مقسطا. Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will descend. He will descend, and he will rule with justice. And he will come حتى يسلم علي. He will visit me just to say salam to me. وَلَا أَرُدَّنَّ السَّلَامِ. And I will reply to him his salam. Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come from the area of Damascus to Medina just to say salam on Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So he said, someone who visits Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is not permissible. And that's not true. He also said, if someone divorces his wife, 3 divorces in one statement, it is considered 1 divorce. And you know that if a person says to his wife, I now divorce you 3 times, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, is 3 divorces, not 1 divorce. He went against that as well. And amongst the most dangerous statements that he said is that he said Allah has a body, He has shape, and He has a volume, and that matter of the universe is eternal, it existed with Allah, and that hellfire will vanish. All of those issues contradict the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the sunnah of the Prophet, and the ijma' of all the scholars. So, but he would not say all those things in one session to everybody. He would say one thing, after some time, one thing would come out. The people would took him to the ruler, or they complained to the ruler. The ruler brought him in the session of scholars. The scholars debated him. He refuted. He even had a letter he signed. He said, I repent, I say the Shahada, and I come back to Islam. So what are you going to do with a person like that? He's saying, I repent. I testify that no one is God except Allah, and Muhammad is His messenger, and I will never say that again. I leave that. Because he had some knowledge. He knew what to do to get out of it. So the scholars would not be able to do anything to him. So they kept him in jail for a period of time as a punishment. Then they let him go. Then another statement would come out. Then when they would debate him, he would come the same outcome. He would testify. He would say, I repent. And, I will not do it again. Then another thing would come out. This happened 4 times. The ruler called him to his session with the scholars, and each time he would repent. He would claim to repent. We cannot see the heart. Apparently, he would claim to repent. Some scholars, the scholars different on what to do with him. Some scholars said people like him, they had more severe statement about what should be done to him. Other scholars said he's going to be kept in jail until he dies. They're not going to let him go. And they kept him like that in Damascus, in the castle of Damascus, until he died. But when we say jailed, it was not like a jail that we're used to here in the States. It was more like a house arrest. He used to have visitors, he authored books, and he continued with his fitna. That's why we know that he didn't really repent. If somebody says that, those scholars, they didn't give the fatwa on him to be executed because he actually repented. But then he continued to say, authored books and caused fitna while he was in house arrest. So this is in brief Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, brief biography of Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. And his fitna was extinguished pretty much after he died, because the scholars, they put him in jail and house arrest, and he was limited until he died. So his followers were very few, and basically his fitna was extinguished pretty much. Until the man named Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who came from the area of Najd, where the Prophet ﷺ said, يَطْلَوْ قَرْنُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ النَّجْد. And Najd is east of Medina. Go look on a map. Go directly east and you will see that it hits the area of Riyadh in the area of Najd. And he pointed to the east and he said, يَطْلَوْ قَرْنُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ النَّجْد. So this man, he came from Najd, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he actually took this, he read the books of Ibn Taymiyyah and he resurfaced the fitna that was buried. He brought it back out. And Q&A, somebody asked, oh, what is the hadith? Al-anbiya'u ahya'un fi quburihim yusallun. What is the judgment of that hadith? And the Shaykh said that this is a strong hadith as narrated by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. And the last story that the Shaykh mentioned, he said in Al-Jimma, an area in Ethiopia, there was a man who used to celebrate the Mawlid. So he used to, every year, he used to make food to give to the people who on the day of the Mawlid celebration. So he used to make food and give to the people. So he had a son, this man. He did not take care of his son properly. Like many people, they do not. They take care of their food, shelter, and clothing, just like a person takes care of a cow. If you have a cow, what are you going to make sure? You're going to make sure that he has shelter, you're going to make sure he has food, and you're going to make sure that he doesn't get sick. But this is not the issue only to properly take care of a person. So he did not take care of his son properly. The son went to the area of Saudi Arabia. And after some time, he came back. So when he came back, one day his father, as usual every year, he had prepared food. And his father had gone out. So he saw the food there. He took some kerosene and he put the kerosene in all the food. Because they claim that this is an enormous sin, the food that is prepared for celebrating the birth of the best of all the creation, Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, who was sent as a prophet of mercy. And because of him we were guided. Allah Ta'ala guided us through Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So the person who, this person, he saw the food, he put kerosene in all the food. His father came back and he saw that the guests had not eaten. The guests had come and they saw the food is full of kerosene and they didn't eat anything. So he asked, why didn't you eat? And they told him. So he went and he killed his son. This man, he killed his son. Then afterwards he went to the authorities and he turned himself in. He said, I killed my son. The authorities took him and jailed him. And after some time later, they released this man. So this is the fitna that they cause in society. They go and they call Muslims unrightfully non-Muslims, and then after that they deem permissible anyone who claims that they celebrates the Mawlid or says Ya Rasulullah, they call him mushrik, and then after some time they will legitimate violence and they will start to kill and bomb and these things, which is not permissible things to do. Waliyadu billah. May Allah Ta'ala protect us from the harm. We have to, our book we mentioned these things. It's going, I don't want to say off topic, but these things are mentioned because of the situation that we're in. Otherwise, we would not need to spend so much time explaining all these things. These are very simple things that Muslim knows. That if you call somebody, oh Zayd, come here, help me, that this is not shirk. If you say in your prayer, the Prophet taught you to say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu, you know that this is not shirk. He is absent still. You know that you're going to be alive back in the grave, and you're going to be alive after that on the Day of Judgment. These are very simple issues that Muslims understand. But because of them, you have to go spend a lot of time explaining, because you don't want Muslims to unrightfully call others non-Muslims, because a lot of hardships comes and fitna is caused by that. And this is what they do. We ask Allah Ta'ala to protect the Muslims from their harm, and to keep us protected and guided, make us die in the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, following the footsteps of the scholars, the Ahl Sunnah scholars. The knowledge of the Ahl Sunnah scholars is the key to paradise. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us amongst them. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Taha al-Amin.